Johnny Gamage. What is that according to law? That's contracting business under a false name. You can go to jail for that. That's what it is. Gamage is an Englishman. Or a Scotsman, I'm sorry. He's not an Asiatic, he's a Scotsman. Therefore, no rights to be respected. He doesn't honor his mother and father with his national parentage name. That means he's the property of the person who owns that national parentage name. That's what it means, according to law. So he is subject to, not part and parcel to. He's subject. All right? So, that's what happened to him. That's what happened to the cops in LA with the Rodney King incident. That's what happened to O.J. Simpson. Do you know why what happened to O.J. Simpson happened to O.J. Simpson? Had nothing to do with the murder of his ex-wife. It had to do with, as Brother Taj Tariq put it, the Black Codes of 1724, which is what all your state legislation is based on. The Black Codes of 1724. Look them up. They just won't call them that. They call them vagrancy laws. It's the same thing. Do you know what one of those is? The one that they applied to O.J. Simpson's issue? It is forbidden for any European woman to marry a Negro. And they are not obligated to recognize the marriage. And that person can be subjected to any arbitrary punishment. Basically, we'll make something up for him. Well, that's what happened to O.J. But they can't tell you that because you have to have faith in civil rights. Because that's the plug on the bottle for the genie. You the genie or the genius. That's the cork in the bottle. One of them. Because once you get away from the whole race issue and civil rights issue, now we're thinking real issues. It's never been color. It's not about, oh, we just don't like you niggas. It's always, always, always been about the true parental ownership of the land. Always. Oh, they love it every 26th of February when we say Black History Month. And we praise the myth of coming across the Atlantic. What did it say, 50 million? I've heard ridiculous numbers, 200 million of us. Read an atlas and look at the west coast of Africa and tally the approximate population. Don't you realize that 20 to 50 million people across the Atlantic would have depopulated Western Africa? It never happened. How many people are familiar with the Olmecs, Toltecs in Mexico? What do they look like? Dark-skinned, kinky-haired people, am I correct? Now, we can prove that at least a small group of dark-skinned, kinky-haired people were pre-Columbian. They were here before Columbus and before the so-called slave trade from Africa. Can anyone here in this room prove that their ancestors came from that landmass? Just knowing about the Olmecs destroys the myth of the transatlantic slave trade. We were always here. As long as you're thinking race and it's just white and black and they don't like us niggas, you will always keep doing the same things and expecting different results. That's the clinical definition of insanity. Yes, sir. Him and me. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you this. How did our racism get here? That's it.
Brother, I'll tell you. How did you, within the course of 400 years, I'll answer your question. How did you, within the course of 400 years, lose your identity? Black is an adjective. Black describes a noun, and a noun is an object, person, place, thing, or idea. Black what? They can go into the ground and dig up bones and tell you what the animals ate millions of years ago. But in the course of 400 years, all of a sudden they don't know who you are. So the big joke every 25 years is what the niggas gonna call themselves today. Do you know how they changed you from a national identity to property status walking on two legs? Like the sister said, education. They rewrote history and got you to accept it. Now, once they did that, they could tell you anything. We got you from the moon. And you will have no choice but to believe it because you don't know where you came from. Fact. You don't know where. They say, we got you from Mars, nigga. And you'll be like, Black Power, I'm proud to be from Mars. And they laugh every year with a joke. I have to give credit to Minister Louis Farrakhan for the Million Man March because in one day, he helped to change hundreds of years of negative information, disinformation about you here. Just because a lot of us, blind, deaf, and dumb Negroes, got together in one place with relative peace. I give it up to him because of that. He changed public policy on the Negro in one day. Or he helped to.
Ran
The
the
fact,
government to Houston, Texas, too.
that's right. But the fact of the matter is that none of our people wanted to touch us. They didn't want to touch us. We were stinking. As some people say, in a shallow grave. We were stinking. Still are. Still are. You know what I'm saying? That's why, okay? We came, without confusing people, I'll just say it, might as well say it. Brother, you never left ancient Africa. You never left ancient Africa, and I'll prove it. You never left it, you're always here. The only thing that happened is that you came from Africa to America by the stroke of a pen. They changed the name. How many people here are familiar with one of the oldest maps of the Western Hemisphere called the Piri-Reis map? It's written in Latin, it's also written in Arabic by a quote-unquote Arab cartographer by the name of Piri-Reis.
Name again?
Piri-Reis, P-I-R-I-R-E-I-S. In Arabic, or in your Aramaic languages, we don't write the vowels, am I correct? Studies Hebrew. Why? I mean, I won't go into why in detail. Bottom line is that the vowel contains the life of the word. And words are things, and words bring things into physical manifestation. So the vowels are considered sacred. Okay? In Latin, he called what we now call America Mex. It's on the map. In Arabic, he called it MRC. Let's look at that for a second. In your Latin-based languages, we have masculine tense and feminine tense, right? We can say puerto, we can say puerta in Spanish, correct? Masculine, feminine. We can express this word in masculine or feminine tense, and it's been done. It'll look crazy to us here because we're here. Talk to somebody who speaks Arabic or Latin, it makes perfect sense. Masculine tense. Feminine tense. Just switched up name. That's it. Morocco is America. Question, like I asked before. This flag here, when was it taken down on this landmass? First of all, most people, like I said before, are not aware that this flag flew on this landmass. When was it taken down? 1774. When did it go back up on this landmass? When did it go back up?
1933.
Exactly 20 years earlier. 1913 was when this flag was flown again in the Americas. This is historical fact. Why is that significant? I'll tell you why. In what we now call the state of Morocco, over there on the continent we now call Africa, when did this flag first fly? 1956, when they won their independence from the French. Where did it fly first in the modern world? A flag is representative of a nation. So now, based on the history I just gave you, where is the real Morocco?
Right here.
Can I give you more proof? Everybody's heard of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the European nations and the Sultan of Morocco. If the state of Morocco over there didn't exist until legally 1956, who signed the treaty in 1787?
George Washington.
But where was it signed? Two books. Get a book called, Hakeem has spoken about this book, The Diplomatic Relations Between the United States and the Barbary Powers, 1776 to 1816, written by a man named Ray Irwin. Get the book. That book will tell you some things that you didn't see or you didn't hear in history class.
Could you repeat the name?
Diplomatic Relations Between the United States and the Barbary Powers. The author of the book is Professor Ray Irwin. I'm going to read you something else. My last lecture, I read this letter. The letter I'm reading is a letter dated December 1st, 1787. 1787. Written to the Sultan of Morocco by, guess who? George Washington. Great and magnanimous friend. Since the date of the letter, which the late Congress, by their president, addressed to your Imperial Majesty, the United States of America has thought proper to change their government and institute a new one agreeable to the Constitution, of which I have the honor of herewith enclosing a copy. The time necessarily employed in the arduous task and the derangement occasioned by so great though peaceable a revolution will apologize and account for your Majesty's not having received those regular advices and marks of attention from the United States. What was he talking about? They were paying tribute money just to be able to sail up and down the eastern seaboard. Get the book, it'll tell you. During this whole time, supposedly they tell you that they were fighting this revolution against European British redcoats. All of the European nations were enslaved and paying tribute to the Bey of Algiers, Tripoli, Morocco, Bey, Tripoli, Algiers, Morocco, and Tunis. Fact. That's the real history. Why is it that the Revolutionary War was basically only fought on land? Yes, sir.
Did you ever think about making about 1 million of those copies and passing them out at the White House?
Brother, this is the age of Aquarius, which is the age of I know. Now, this law ain't no secret, but everybody needs one. I'm not saying we keep this secret. And this is the age of Aquarius, which is the age of I know, but you have to be intelligent in how you pass it. A marksman says 1 bullet, 1 body. You don't spray because you hit all the wrong people. You understand? 1 bullet, 1 body. So you put it out in the proper way. Spreading out over the White House, all they're going to do is say, well, this person doesn't know what they're doing and they have no idea what they have. They don't know how to use the tool. They just got a whole bunch of tools in a bag carrying it around. You have to know how to use the tool. The fact of the matter is that you have to understand, or how we use it, How we use the tool, this particular one, is knowing who are the parties involved. Who are the parties involved? Part of the title of my lecture was Operative Masonry, not speculative. We've been speculating for 400 some odd years. Right? Now we have to be Master Masons and Eastern Stars. We gotta be that. Okay? And a master don't necessarily have to ask the questions. He should know. Yes, sir.
There's another question before I forget.
Yes, sir.
If a police officer came approaching me and asked me where do I live, and I told him in my body, what's to stop him from pulling a Rodney King on me?
Absolutely nothing. Think about it, brother. The definition of a colonist is what? A thief. Now, I've used this analogy enough a lot of times. If I'm used to running you for your train fare every day without questioning, you don't fight me. You give it up, even to the point where I don't even have to ask. I just look at you the right way and you give up your train fare for years and years and years on end. Then all of a sudden, one day you want to get some heart and say, no, you just can't take my money like that no more. What am I going to do? I'm going to go, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I was wrong. As a matter of fact, here's all the money I took from you years before. That's not going to happen. It's a fight. I'm going to swell up on you. I'm like, what do you mean that money? You're going to fight, man. They're not going to give it up like that easy. It's not going to happen. Of course, yeah, you say this, that, and the other to a police officer. It's going to be a problem. You know, we know that. But again, the whole issue is education. I'm going to tell you something that happened up in Syracuse, New York. There was a group, there's an organization that's basically funded by this European Jewish woman who writes grants. They basically take advantage of the violence in the youth in the urban areas by giving them BS programming and then writing glowing reports to the federal government saying it's working so they can keep getting the grants. That goes on all over the country, by the way, right? It's in their best interest that the violence continues because that's how they keep getting the money. All right? They tried to hire one of my former partners, and he was like, yeah, because they knew he was special job. He was native to the Syracuse area. He knew all the youth organizations and everything. He had the ends, so they needed him. He said, all right, you got me. But guess what? I'm not signing a W-4. And I'm filling out the I-9 form for immigration and nationalization my way. Because I don't contract with these people without reserving my rights. It went all the way up to the top brass. The lady said, well, we're just gonna have to fire you because they tell us that you gotta fill it out this way or we lose our grant. We'd rather you sue us than we lose the grant. So see ya, they fired her. 2 months later, they asked me for the job, figuring, well, I'm a nicer guy. I'm a Sagittarius born on a Friday, so I got the Venus influence. I'm kind of nice. So they say, yeah, we'll get him. So they sweet talk me into the interview, and I'm like, oh, they're trying to play me over. They trying to play me for a candy bar, price of a candy bar over my man. Yeah, went through the whole interview, but they held up the interview because part of the board is the senior district attorney, a police officer, and a member of the probation department. And everybody else is Negroes, no disrespect. It was Negroes. Other 3 cats are Europeans. And they're saying, hey, what's up with these Moors? They're crazy. I mean, they got ends of the community up here, but they're wild. They won't do this. They don't got driver's licenses. They don't got this, that, and the other. And guess what the European cop told him? He stood up. They said, what do you think? He said, I know plenty of people that travel in their vehicles without licenses, legally. Well, after the Negroes picked the jaws up off the ground, they said, well, what do you do when you stop them? He said, I let them go. Now, we know that the police department knows about this. We know. We put them on notice. And they did the research and said, yeah, we can't mess with them, which is why they didn't mess with us. But that European did not have to tell those blind, deaf, and dumb Negroes that. You see what I'm saying? It's education, brother. Just like Horace Greeley did to us in 1854. Educational revolution. We ain't gonna do it with this. We're gonna do it with this. And that's what they did. It was Horace Greeley that suggested the name white. instead of calling us ourselves by the tribe of axe and spear. They were barbarians.
That's the Go West young man, something like that?
Manifest Destiny, he was a part of that, yes, sir. They were the tribe of axe and spear. Did you know that? That's where the term Anglo-Saxon comes from. Anglo or Anglii comes from, is Latin for spear, chunker, and Saxon is Latin for axe. They were two warring factions and split up into different sub-tribes that were warring against each other for years, and then they finally got together and said, look, we can't have this. We got a common enemy. We're gonna call ourselves white collectively. And that's what they did. It has never been law that you were black and they were white. That's always been European custom. It's never been law. Research Plessy versus Ferguson. It'll tell you that. It ain't law, it's custom. But they got us following and chasing after. When the nations of the earth, come on, we're contracting, we're calling ourselves black and everything artificial. And then have the nerve to ask people with real nationalities for human rights and respect. But that's crazy. I'll give you an example of how crazy it is. That's like I have a plastic plant sitting here, and you see me and everybody sees it's plastic, and I'm giving it water and plant food. You're gonna be like, what the hell is wrong with you? You guys, if you can, you would come and stop me from doing it. Like, what are you doing? Isn't that what the foreigners do to us here? Am I correct? Isn't that how we're treated? They look at us like, we're told you like your condition. And they are told that. Don't tell them about nationality. How is it that every person on the planet has a nationality but you? And how is it that you're actually taught to separate yourself from the idea of nationality? But ironically, nationality is the prerequisite to citizenship. You see the games being played? Where you from, sir? People, oh, okay. There's, what was the difference between the Johnny Gamage case and the Amadou Diallo case? What was the difference? When the police, question, why is it that they're trying so hard to get the feds to jump on the Johnny Gamage case and they won't touch it, regardless to what you hear? And in the Amadou Diallo case, they immediately were on it. Why? Why is it that the police got on TV publicly and said, we made a grave mistake? Did they make a mistake in filling him full of holes? Do you know what the mistake was? The mistake was that they mistook him for an American Negro with no nationality. That's the mistake they made. Because with a nationality, that means what? You have a flag, a constitution, a government that is sworn to protect you. He had a nationality. They were like, oh my God. We thought he was a savage nigga. And the feds immediately jumped on it. Because he had rights. He honored his mother and father. Sorry to say. And this is really, it's an indictment on us. But what's about to happen in a few short days? Say it. Say it loud. Yeah, Mumia Abu-Jamal is going to die. He's going to die. That's an indictment on us that say we know about nationality and rights and sovereignty and all these cool things. That man's going to die. It's education. That European has to get educated too. He had to subject himself to the same false history before he could subject the rest of the world to it.
So why don't the brothers that know these things go and say me?
Good question. I know of a couple brothers that have actually mailed the brother material. But a lot of the brothers, it's too little too late. It's a daily $1 short. Basically, they're going to kill this man just on principle. On principle. Just to say, Y'all are niggas, yo. You gonna stay niggas. And we don't give a damn about you. You see what I'm saying? But it's nothing to get emotional about, which is what we do. Oh, we killed our brother. When in fact, the whole time this man was locked down, we were cheerleaders. Cheerleaders. And a lot of us were slick enough to make a lot of money off of it. Going back to the whole civil rights thing. If the civil rights bill is not law, and most of your so-called civil rights leaders are lawyers, why have they not told you that it is not law? Another question. If it is in fact true that you never were brought over here en masse on a transatlantic slave trade issue, and that our brothers in said Africa and other places know this, but they teach African studies in all your major universities. I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this. What does that say about these people? What are they doing? That's a big question. We're gonna take I'll take the question. Go ahead.
Did not the officers in the Rodney King case was tried the second time for their civil rights violations?
Again, it's all smokescreen, brother. That has other people in arms saying, oh, that's double jeopardy, you can't try them twice for the same thing. But it was the biggest back door. They were tried for civil rights violations. There's no such law in the books. The Civil Rights Bill is not law. They have to sign it every 25 years. It's not law. So all the lawyer has to do, a dime store legal, a dime store cat can walk in the court and say, and file a motion to dismiss based on what? It's not law. It's a non-existent law. Yeah, oh, they were convicted of civil rights violations. But that's like me going into a courtroom and the judge says, how do you plead? And I say, man, can't be yes or no at the same time. I don't plead. Plea is a self-incriminatory statement. I make a move to dismiss. This court cannot hear redress of my grievance. Improper venue. Lack of jurisdiction. And he ignores it, contrary to Supreme Court case Higgins versus Levine. Proceeds, and I stand mute. And they go, all the way down the line and convict me. And I turn around the very next day and appeal and say, well, Higgins versus Levine says that once jurisdiction is challenged, it must be proven on the record. And U.S. versus Throckmorton, Supreme Court decision says that no sanction is lawful absent proof of jurisdiction. You gotta dismiss on appeal. That's what they did. So it doesn't matter. On paper, yeah, they'll put it in the paper, Sharif Bey got convicted of blah, 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 but I'm walking the streets the next day on appeal. And that's what happened. It was a smokescreen. Our people said, we got justice. You got convicted. And they never did a day in jail. Because they can't tell you that it was never about race or prejudice. It was always law. They're always working with law. Do you know why? This is the legal reason why Rodney King, Johnny Gamage's family, OJ can never bring a constitutional issue up against these Europeans. Because, and I'm gonna deal with this in the second half of the lecture, but this is gonna tie into it. All law is contract. All of it. Constitutions are contracts between two parties or more. The reason why these Negroes could not use the Constitution against these Europeans is because they're not a party to the contract. How the hell are you going to use the document against somebody who's a party to it and you're not even a party to it? But they can't tell you that. Because if they tell you that, you have riots and we'll realize, oh my God, they were right about Dred Scott. We never were members of their European Union Society of the Several States. It's like what happened in the Depression. They'll say, well, what happens when you hold government and nobody shows up? You won't participate anymore. if you knew that.
Lastly, can you briefly break down this driving license not having license?
Basically, and then we're going to go into break and I'll talk about it later. The difference between a right and a privilege. A right is something that you are born with and no one can take from you. You can waive it though. If this was your house, we have all the rights here. A privilege is something someone gives to you and can take away or can regulate. They say driving is a privilege. Have you looked up the legal definition of a driver? Look it up. The legal definition of a driver is one who is employed in the use of the public highways. Do you drive a cab? Do you drive a truck transporting goods? Are you a driver? Do you have a driver's license?
Yes.
You're a driver. You work for the state. And now they can regulate your right to freedom of travel because you gave up the right to freedom of travel, which is a right for the privilege of driving. Question, if you want to be a so-called doctor, what must you get? If you want to be a registered nurse, what must you get? What profession are you engaged in the travel from point A to point B in your own vehicle? We're going to take a break.
Take a 20-minute break. Let's have a big hand for Sharif Bailey.
Peace. When we left off, we were talking about, I had mentioned the whole issue about constitutions and law being contract. And that is the basic nature of the term jurisprudence, or the science of law, is that it's contract. There's only one living law, and that's divine law, all right? And that's based in the nature of woman. It is. Fact of the matter, fact. All your municipal, all the way up to your higher state government organizations are all based on maternal and matriarchal principles. Now, they say patriarchal on the surface, sure, but they never, ever abandoned their matriarchal foundation. Most of you here are men. I would assume most of you have children. You can prove it very simply. Every time your wife or your girl, whoever, goes to the hospital with an issue about the child, does the doctor talk to you or to her? When dealing with social services, does the individual talk to the father or the mother? Regardless of whether you're married or not. Wow. They're not stupid. They're ruling based on what you gave them. They are not stupid. They know that if they don't honor mother, or if they screw with Mother Nature will screw with them. They know that. But that's divine law. Law in terms of interaction with two or more people is always a contract. Always. We got a number of people here in the entertainment business, so they understand the nature of contract. The first step in a contract is an offer has to be made. Usually in terms of contract law, you hear of three main things: offer, consideration, and acceptance. Those three things. There's some other issues that are part of contract law that they don't want you to know about. Or not so much they don't want you to know about, they don't talk about it. I mean, erase it. Shortcut. All right. And these are very important principles of contract law. And this is important that you know this, and you'll see in a minute. Mutuality, extremely important. Competence, another extremely important issue. And by the nature of a contract itself, it is to never be vague. It has to be specific to the letter. Now those 3 points are extremely important, and we'll get into that in a minute as to why. All law is based on contract. I'm going to explain in a very simple manner the nature or the science or the jurisprudence of contracts or constitutions. If this gentleman and I have a beef, I violated him in some kind of way, I punched him in the mouth, let's say. He comes to me and he says, look, you punched me in the mouth. We have to handle this. And I say, all right, how about I pay you $50? We handle it that way? He says, nah. How about I get to punch you in the mouth back? And I go, how about I give you $100? And he goes, all right. What has just happened at that point?
Settle.
We just made a contract. And that contract was mutually agreed upon by 2 competent parties, the parties involved. And it wasn't vague. I made an offer. There was consideration, which was negotiated. And then there was acceptance. Once it's accepted, that agreement became the law by which the dispute was settled. Why is it that people go to school for 7 and 8 years to learn that? That became the law by which the dispute is settled. That's pretty simple. What if we could come to no agreement? Then there's no law. There's no redress of grievance. There's no mutual interface by which we can solve the issue. Am I correct? Does that make sense? Okay. That is law. That is law. That's what a constitution is. A constitution is a contract between 2 parties. The parties, number 1, have to be positively identified. And then the offer has to be made, or the body of the contract. And then it is sealed or signed, which gives it life by the 2 parties. That now becomes the manner of discourse legally between the 2 parties. That's what a constitution is. So let's see if we can identify those in the Constitution of the United States. How many people here know the preamble to that Constitution by heart? I do. It starts, "We, the people of the United States." Now, stop right there. The term United States, again, legally speaking, in a legal law dictionary, does not mean the several states. It doesn't mean that. Never did. It says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect what? Union. Those are your 2 parties. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for who? The United States of America. What is of? Language-wise, what is of? It's a conjunction denoting what? Ownership. Right? Ownership, the camera of this one. So we're talking 2 parties, United States of America. And this Constitution was established for the United States of America. That's why they never say that those Europeans wrote it. They say that they framed it. That's why. They didn't write it. They didn't write it. They framed it. They took it and adapted it. Can I prove that? I read you the first half of the letter that George Washington wrote to the Sultan of Morocco, where he says it. He says, the United States of America have thought proper to change the government and institute a new one agreeable to the Constitution. He said it. So we understand now how that Constitution is a contract, and now we have to identify the parties involved. A lot of our people are so caught into this thing where we say, oh, well, the Constitution doesn't represent black people. You're right, it doesn't. But now you have to ask the question, what's a black person? We already went over that, didn't we? Again, Noble Drew Ali said, can a man be black, Negro, colored, Indian, or West Indian? No. Man cannot be a color. So you're right. Constitution does not recognize black people. Guess who else it doesn't recognize? White people. Understand? Doesn't recognize them either. But in one section it does. The United States of America. Who are the citizens of the United States of America? Do you know?
The Moors.
No, not the United States of America, sorry. Not the United States of America. United States, United Sovereigns, yes. The Aboriginals of America. The United States of America, or the Aboriginals in America. The United States of America are the contracted European males. Can I prove it? Sure. What happened what legislation was passed in 1920? Women's suffrage. What does that mean? That means that the drafting of this Constitution for the United States of America, which is the several European states, the European woman was not human. She was not one of the contracted citizens party to the Constitution. How did they get it? Denied their men sex. They denied their men sex. And they got the vote in 1920. But still, it was an amendment. It's what we call in legal language ex post facto, after the fact. Yes, sir.
But if the woman wasn't human, how could they be human if they came from the woman?
Well, that's nature's law. We know that. But again, before they can enslave you and take you outside of the constitutional fold, they had to do it to themselves. To keep my foot on your neck means that I'm enslaved too, because I got to keep my foot there. I can't go nowhere either. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Now, we the people are represented by this seal. That's us. That's us. We lost that. We stepped outside of the constitutional fold, and it's spoken of in your Bible. The story of the prodigal son tells it in the plainest language. The man was the son of the king, which means he was what? What's another definition of king, or another word analogous to king? Sovereign. He was the son of the king, but he left home. He wanted to see what was out in the big wide world. Ended up feeding the pigs of his father's enemy. And the pigs ate better than him. Right? That's how the story went. And the man was like, wait a minute. My father's servants eat 10 times better than me right now. If I just go back to my father as a servant, come back humble, it'll be all right. So that's what he did. His father threw a party for him, put a ring on his finger, gave him his seat back. You know. And that's the situation we're in. We strayed, as Drew Ali said. He said, through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. That is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774. And the words Negro, black, and colored were given to the Asiatics of America, who were of Moorish descent, because they honored not the principles of their mother and father, and strayed after the gods of Europe, who they knew nothing of. Brother, when you asked the question before about how we came here from Africa to America, What do you know? What do people know about true world geography? See, again, like the sister said, man, we are woefully lacking in the proper education to take our place amongst the civilized nations of the world. Because this is common knowledge to everybody else on the planet. They know it. They already know it. We're the Johnny-come-latelys, man. All right. In the old world, quote unquote, pre-Columbian era, you know, Christopher Columbus, we did not think, or the people of the civilized people of the world did not think in terms of nation states and continents. Everything was spoken of in terms of kingdoms, empires, and dominions. There's a difference. There's a big difference. The difference is that with states and continents, you have definite physical borders. Or nowadays, corporate borders. Those borders are on paper. Or kingdoms, empires, and right? Basically mean wherever the rule of that ruling body extends to. You understand what I'm saying? So if I say that where I'm sitting right now is a Mexico, and this is the ruling body for a Mexico, then we finance our own trip to the moon, and I plant that flag on the moon, that's a Mexico. Because the extent of our rule extends there. You understand? That's a basic premise of world geography that they will not teach you in school. An empire or kingdom or dominion is determined by wherever my rule extends to. So if my rule extends, as in chapter 47, Noble Drew Ali's Quran, the dominions of Africa. Listen to this. Dominions. Remember, we're using the term dominions, not continents, not nation states. Dominions. The Moabites from the land of Moab received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. That's important. Think not continents, dominions. They were the founders and are the true possessors of the Moroccan Empire, with their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking new homes. Listen close. Their dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa, across the great Atlantic, even unto the present north, south, and Central America. Also Mexico and the Atlantic Islands before the great earthquake which caused the great Atlantic Ocean. You understand what we're saying? The range or the rule of the dominions of a Mexico or Africa extended here. That's backed up by archaeology, history, science. You get online and look up a magazine called Ancient American. I'm sure a number of you are familiar with it. They might as well call it Moorish American. They might as well, because the whole magazine is about permanent Asiatic presence in the Americas, pre-Columbian. That's what the whole magazine is about. Look it up, ancientamerican.com, yes sir.
So we were here before the so-called indigenous people. That, you know,
honestly,
Native America, whatever.
The fact is that you yourself are the Native American. You are the Native American. We represent the whole human bouquet. If you didn't know this sister right here or this brother right here, you would swear that they were either European or Indian or whatever. Am I right? We represent the whole human bouquet. We produce every shade. Every shade. We just fell into stupidity. All of us, keeping it real. We fell into stupidity when somebody said, oh, he's Puerto Rican. You're a Negro. You're this and you're that. You gotta be kidding me. Didn't we fall into that? How many times, I mean, this is kind of humorous. I'm going to say it anyway. How many times have we heard the terms, oh, I saw this sister, she was fly, she was half Puerto Rican and black. That's ridiculous, isn't it? When you have Puerto Ricans who are darker than this man. It don't got nothing to do with color. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
Well, no, I just want you to, if you can elaborate on who the real red men were. Can you elaborate on that for him? So you understand where they got that Native American red skin from.
I think I know where you're going.
Which party and,
I'll deal with it on two different ways.
Well, some of the pictures that I have home of the so-called Native American are very, very dark-skinned people. Now, they might have lightened up in the past 100 years.
Of course.
Or so.
Of course.
Because I've been to a couple of powwows and I've seen some blonde and blue-eyed so-called natives.
Well, just like Hakeem has said on a number of his lectures, he's like, you have a lot of people now that claim that they're Native American. All they are is Europeans with long hair.
Yeah.
What does that mean? C.M. Bay said it. He said after a particular point in time, we would start, our people, our mothers would start producing champions in every area of people activity. And that the European order of Christ and Mary would end with the European woman and her son begging us for social recognition. That's what you see when you see these Europeans flocking to Native American reservations and protesting and wearing baggy jeans and b-boying harder than you. They're begging you for social recognition. That's exactly what it is. We don't recognize it though. We're still trying to be them. But going back to the whole Native American thing and this whole red man issue. Firstly, from an anthropological point of view, the European change agents would have you think that the Americas were populated across the Bering Strait in Alaska from the north and then down the south. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or an Einstein to look at the civilizations in Native America, the ancient civilizations. You find that the oldest and most advanced were in the south. And they became more nomadic and contemporary as you went north. Oh yeah, there were people that came across the Bering Strait. There were some of Genghis Khan's people, and they were nomadic and warlike. But the people in the Central and South America, and all up along the Mississippi, looked just like you. And we had to, come on, you're talking about people that have been here, even the European will say, okay, at least 16, 17,000 years. You mean to tell me in 16 to 17,000 years they were all living in teepees? Come on, they ain't built cities? Yo, we really Negroes, Joe. Yes, sir.
According to the record, in the year 711, there was Africans, dark-skinned Africans, living in America before Christopher Columbus.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Columbus himself, like the sister pointed out earlier, Columbus himself reported in his own journals that he was sailing off the northeast coast of Cuba, and he saw a mosque. His own son reported that at one point, Hakeem spoke about this in one of his lectures. He spoke about how Ferdinand Columbus wrote about how they needed some people to speak to the king of Cuba. And they had two Jews amongst them. And one spoke Arabic, another one spoke Hebrew. And so he sent them because that's what the kings and the nobility in Cuba were speaking. They know, man. They know better than we do. They got us thinking this garbage that we were running around over there on some other landmass. And as long as they got us thinking that, we will never claim ours here. Yes, sir?
Well, someone once said, why don't they go back to Africa? So I said, this is Africa, because I thought this broke off from Africa.
Also, too, even more so than that, brother, again, the dominions. The dominions extended here. And the big secret, brother, is this. In reality, the dominions started here and extended outward. That's the big secret that lots of people pay hundreds and thousands of dollars for and go through a few humiliating things and then swear they can't tell anybody. You understand what I'm saying? That's one of the big secrets. That's one of the big secrets. You are sitting in the promised land, the New Jerusalem. This is right here. You're here. You know? All for the past, honestly, for the past, all of recorded history, which extends about 51,000 years. For the past 51,000 years, the whole world has been controlled openly and secretly from this hemisphere. Fact. Fact. Openly and secretly. Anybody ever ask themselves, so how many people know about, you know, the Nazi war criminals and all the Nazi scientists and that whole thing, that Operation Paperclip?
Yes.
What was their fascination with coming to Argentina? What the hell is in Argentina? How many people are familiar with the Maximilians and the Habsburgs? Do some research. You'll find out that they called the land that we now call Argentina and Brazil ancient Germany. Yes, sir.
Plus, they say that the so-called European or so-called white man had exterminated the so-called native Argentinian people, and the majority of the people that was living in Argentina was of European extraction.
Well, brother,
That's one of the reasons that
I don't know if I want to say this, because I'll just put it like this, brother. A lot of us are familiar, I'm going to say it, a lot of us are familiar with the whole Yakub story about a process depigmentization of a certain group of people. The fact of the matter is, it wasn't done over there. It wasn't done over there. Europe is a designation. In reality, the name Europe is the name of a Moabite queen. It's not a landmass over there that we call Europe over there now. It never was. They took that name once they rose to power. Europe that was pretty good stuff. As the Earth, again, talking about true world geography, why, when you look at maps, the northern hemisphere is called, in Latin, the southern hemisphere is called, what does that mean? Latin or Oriental in Latin means what? East. Occidental means what? West. This was the designation of Europe, the bottom of the world. When Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that EU means hillsides and ROPE means the rope to bind it, that rope was the equator. We kept them at the bottom of the world. Why do we call it the bottom of the world or hell? I'll tell you why. Okay. This is my rendition, North America. Got Australia over here, got Africa, Europe, all this other stuff here, Middle East, whatever. Where's most fact? Also, what I wanted to get to, brother, is this. Where the man was finally finished was here in the area of Argentina, but at the time it was not called Argentina, it was called Patagonia. They still call themselves that. Okay? But the males were the main purveyors of new diseases because of the experimentation. So we had to separate them. And we put them off on the high seas, and we sent them to where? The island of Albine, or Albion. What do Englishmen call themselves to this day? Sons of Albion. Fact. But we kept the women here, which is why to this day you can go to Argentina and Brazil and see these beautiful brown-skinned women with blonde hair. Which is why you heard the Amazon stories of whole communities of women with no men. Which is also why you had the island of Lesbos and all this other crazy stuff over here in Europe, where there was a whole lot of men and no women. We did that. We made the man, so we were responsible in civilizing. So that's our fault too. We can't